On a Tuesday morning in March in a coffee shop in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I sat down across from a woman I had never met and said the strangest sentence of my life. I am so sorry to do this to you, but I believe we are married to the same man. She did not scream, she did not throw her latte. She went very still, looked at the photograph on my phone, and said, "That is my husband. That is Neil." And I said, "I know. He has been mine for 19 years." My name is Laura. I am 45 years old, and I live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in a house with a porch swing that my husband, Neil, repaired every spring like clockwork. Neil sold medical equipment, hospital beds, monitors, surgical lighting. His territory covered much of the South, and for 11 years, his life ran on a tidy rhythm. 1 week home, 1 week on the road. Dallas, mostly, he said, sometimes Atlanta. He called every night at 9. He remembered anniversaries, he coached our son Caleb's baseball team during the summers he was home, and he cried at our daughter's 8th grade graduation. I am telling you this because the internet always asks the wife the same question. How did you not know? And here is the answer. Because he was good at it. Because the man ran 2 lives the way he ran a sales territory, on a calendar, with discipline, for 9 years. 500 miles down the interstate, across the Kentucky line and into Tennessee, there was another porch, another woman, another child, another Neil. And I would never have found any of it if not for a folded piece of construction paper and a 7-year-old boy who loved his daddy enough to draw him. It was January. Neil was in the shower. His laptop bag was open on the kitchen chair, and I was looking for the charging cable he always borrowed and never returned. My fingers found paper. It was folded in quarters and soft at the creases, the way paper gets when it has been carried for a long time. I unfolded it. A crayon drawing. A house, a sun, 3 stick figures holding hands. A tall one, a mommy one, and a small one. Across the top, in careful 7-year-old letters, it said, "I love you, Daddy." And at the bottom was a name. Max. My children were 17 and 15. Neither of them was named Max. I want to tell you what I did during the 4 minutes the shower kept running, because those 4 minutes decided everything. I did not cry. That came later, in parking lots, on a schedule of its own. I took out my phone and photographed the drawing, front and back. Then I folded it along its own soft creases, exactly into quarters, and placed it back in the pocket where I had found it. Because if that drawing was what my stomach said it was, then the man in my shower was the most careful liar I had ever met. And you do not alert a careful man. Neil came downstairs, kissed the top of my head, ate 2 eggs, and told a funny story about a hospital administrator in Dallas. I laughed at it. I would like a small award for that laugh. Then he left for the airport, and I went to work. Not my actual job. This. The credit card statements told me nothing. Of course they did not. 9 years, remember. But cars are honest, even when men are not. His car had burned through nearly an entire oil change interval during a month when he claimed he had mostly flown. The glove compartment held a parking stub, and under the passenger seat rail, wedged deep against the carpet, I found a pharmacy receipt. Chattanooga, Tennessee. Children's allergy medication, paid in cash. A Dallas salesman buying children's antihistamines in cash in Chattanooga. I sat in his car inside our own garage with that receipt in my hand, and I felt the floor of 19 years tilt about 5 degrees. It never tilted back. Here is the part I am not proud of, and the part I would do again tomorrow. I said nothing. For 3 weeks. I smiled, I cooked, I slept beside him, and I watched him the way only a wife can watch, with 19 years of calibration. The 9 p.m. calls, always from quiet rooms, never restaurants. The 2 phones. Work phone, he said. The way he showered the moment he came home. Road grime, he said. And the next time he left on a Sunday for what he called another Dallas week, I did something wives in stories like this always do. I understand now why they do it. I arranged for Sophie to stay with my sister. Caleb was 17 and stayed with a teammate's family during baseball practice. I told everyone I had a work conference. Then I drove 500 miles south to Chattanooga with a pharmacy receipt in my purse. I am not a detective. I want to be clear about that. I am a payroll administrator with a Honda and a full tank of gas. But the receipt had a store number, and the store sat inside a neighborhood. And I had one more clue. Months earlier, I had noticed a photograph on Neil's laptop and quietly taken a picture of it with my phone. At the time, I had barely thought about it. Neil was standing at a backyard cookout I did not recognize. The photograph had been sent to him by a number with a Tennessee area code. In the background was a house with a distinctive yellow front door. It took me a day and a half of driving through school zones and cul-de-sacs near that pharmacy. I am sure I looked like a census worker with poor boundaries. And then on Maple Crest Drive, I saw it, the yellow door. I parked 4 houses away, partially hidden behind an SUV, and waited. At 6:15 that evening, a truck pulled into the driveway. Not his Indiana car, a truck. And out of it, wearing jeans and the green pullover I had bought him 2 Christmases earlier, stepped my husband. A small boy shot out through the yellow door like a cork from a bottle. Neil dropped to one knee in the yard and opened his arms. The boy hit him at a full run, and my husband lifted him into the air and spun him around. Their laughter came through my closed car windows. Then a woman appeared in the doorway. Late 30s, auburn hair tied in a ponytail, a dish towel draped over one shoulder. She leaned against the frame and watched them with a face I recognized, because it used to be my face, the face of a woman whose husband is finally home. I did not confront him on that lawn. I need you to understand why, because it is the whole story. Standing in that yard, Neil had all the power. He had scripts for me, 9 years of them, and he probably had scripts for her about me. But the woman in that doorway had no script. I was almost certain, another victim who did not know she was standing inside the crime scene. If I exploded on that lawn, he would manage us, separately. That was what he did best. But if she and I ever sat at the same table, Neil would have no play. There is no sales training for both wives comparing calendars. So I drove home. I waited 11 days until the rhythm flipped, and Neil was back in Indiana, mowing my lawn in that same green pullover. Then I drove south again, to a coffee shop on a Tuesday to meet my husband's other wife. Her name was Renee. She was 38, she taught 2nd grade, and for 9 years she had believed she was Mrs. Neil Harmon of Chattanooga, Tennessee. She had a marriage certificate, a church wedding, 40 guests. Her father had walked her down the aisle. The wedding had happened 9 years earlier, in June. At the time, my own June marriage to Neil was celebrating its 10th anniversary. I watched Renee's world crack open inside a coffee shop booth. I will not perform that pain for you, because some things belong to the woman they happen to. But I will tell you the 2 sentences that mattered. The first came early, through tears, when she reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. "Did you know about me? Tell me the truth, Laura. Did you know?" I said, "Renee, I found out about a crayon drawing about 5 weeks ago. We are the same kind of fool. There are 2 of us and 1 of him." The second sentence came 40 minutes later, after our phones were on the table, because that was what we did. 2 wives sitting side by side in a booth, laying our calendars against each other like 2 halves of a puzzle. His Dallas weeks were her weeks. His so-called corporate housing weeks in Indianapolis were mine.
Neil had told Renee that his company required him to spend half his time at its Indiana office. 9 years. And the two calendars locked together without one gap. Christmas Eve with me, Christmas Day with her. He was, and I say this with real disgust, extremely organized. Renee stared at the interlocking mess of it, our married lives fitting together like teeth in a zipper. Then she stopped crying. She wiped her face with a napkin, looked directly at me, and said the second sentence. "Okay, Laura, what does he love most? Because I want to take it from him correctly." Reader, I could have hugged her. I did hug her. Here is what we understood in that booth. Alone, I was a betrayed wife. Alone, Renee had been deceived into a marriage that was never legally valid. Bigamy is not merely a soap opera word. It is a crime with a statute number. But together we were the two best informed women in Neil's life. We held 19 years and 9 years of receipts, texts, photographs, financial records, and dates. Matching motives, interlocking evidence. He had kept us in separate states so we would never compare notes. Our notes matched perfectly. We gave ourselves 3 months. We called it the quiet season. Rule 1, nothing changes. I stayed warm in Indiana. Renee stayed warm in Tennessee. Neil received his 9 p.m. calls, his pot roasts, and his ironed shirts in 2 zip codes from 2 women who now texted each other good morning. Rule 2, everything gets copied. I photographed 19 years of financial records. Renee copied 9. A shared folder grew between us, and inside it was a spreadsheet we called the calendar. Every trip, every lie, every receipt. Cross-referenced in 2 colors. Hers was gold, mine was blue. 9 years of a double life reconstructed by a payroll administrator and a second-grade teacher. I want to say, for the record, that we were exceptional. Rule 3, lawyers before feelings. I hired Miss Ortega in Fort Wayne. She prepared a divorce case that accounted for 9 years of marital money quietly bleeding south. Renee hired Mr. Beasley in Chattanooga. He read her marriage certificate, then he read mine. He took off his glasses and said, "Ma'am, in 30 years I have seen nearly everything twice. This I have seen once. It ended very badly for the gentleman." The money was worse than I had imagined. The final estimate came to roughly $300,000 over 9 years, diverted from our household and used to support the Yellow Door House. Mortgage payments, a truck, Max's school expenses, repairs, vacations. My retirement had been funding Neil's second retirement, and through it all, Neil noticed nothing. That is the part people find difficult to believe. But think about it. His entire system depended on 2 women who did not know each other. He had no alarm wired for the one thing that had already happened. The date chose itself, his birthday, June 9th. Neil's 48th birthday fell during a Chattanooga week. He told me, "Sales conference in Houston, Lore. I hate that I will miss my birthday with you." He told Renee, "Clear my calendar. I want dinner at home with you and Max." So Renee planned him a birthday dinner. Roast chicken, his favorite cake, yellow with chocolate frosting from the Good Bakery, candles. Max was sent to a sleepover, by design. 2 places were set at the table. At 5:40, 20 minutes before Neil was expected, I parked my Honda around the corner. I walked through the yellow door, and I sat down in one of the chairs. Renee poured iced tea for both of us. Her hands were shaking. Mine were too. At 6:02, the truck pulled into the driveway. We heard his keys in the door. Then we heard him call out, "Birthday boy is home. Something smells incredible." He came around the corner into the dining room holding a bottle of wine. He saw the cake, he saw the candles, and then he saw his wife, both of them. I have replayed what happened to his face many times. The best way I can describe it is a computer suddenly losing power. It was not ordinary shock. Shock is human. This was a system with no script, searching desperately for one and finding nothing. The bottle of wine simply hung from his hand. Renee spoke first. We had agreed she would. 9 years of being lied to about her entire legal existence had earned her the opening line. She said, "Sit down, Neil. Laura drove 500 miles. The least you can do is have some cake." He did not sit. He said, "My name," then hers. Then he began a sentence. "Okay, listen, this is not," and the sentence simply ran out of road because there was no truthful ending to it anywhere on earth. I slid the first envelope across the table. I said, "This one is from Indiana. Divorce papers. Ms. Ortega is expecting your attorney's call. You will find the financial numbers thorough. I do payroll, sweetheart. I found all of it. The $300,000 has a spreadsheet." Renee slid the second envelope toward him. "This one is from Tennessee," she said. "My marriage was never legally valid. Not in the church, not at the hospital when Max was born, not on one single morning of the last 9 years. And bigamy is a crime in this state, Neil. The police report has been filed. The investigator's card is attached to the first page." Neil pulled out a chair. Then he sat down hard, all at once, the way men do when the floor finally tilts beneath them too. He looked at the cake more than he looked at either of us. Then he asked quietly, "How long have you two known each other?" Renee and I looked across the table at one another, and I said, "Long enough to compare calendars. You never missed a date in 9 years, Neil. Neither did we." He looked up at the two of us sitting side by side, his entire system in one room calmly holding iced tea. And the great salesman, the man with a script for every room in 2 states, said the only fully honest thing I heard from him that year. "I never had a plan for this." Renee leaned toward the cake and blew out the candles. "We know," she said. "That was the plan." The legal part took most of the following year. But compared with 9 years of lies, it moved quickly. Neil eventually pleaded guilty in Tennessee to charges connected to the bigamous marriage and the financial deception. He received probation, fines, restitution, and a felony record. His charm did not work on a judge the way it had worked at dinner tables. My divorce settled without a trial. Miss Ortega's spreadsheet saw to that. I kept the house. I kept the porch swing. And I kept the majority of what remained, with the $300,000 he had diverted counted against his share, every blue and gold line of it. Renee's civil case settled too. 9 years of being deceived into a fraudulent marriage had a dollar amount, it turned out. Max's financial support was locked into a court order until he reached adulthood, secured against Neil's assets so he could not simply stop paying or move the money again. Neil now lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in neither city. He pays toward 2 households and fully belongs to none. He has scheduled time with Max. He sees Caleb and Sophie when they choose. That decision belongs to them. Sometimes they say yes because he is still their father, and grief is not tidy. Now, the part you are actually wondering about. Renee and me. We text most days. She sends me stories from her 2nd grade classroom that could cure a headache. I did her taxes last spring. My children call her Aunt Renee, originally with full teenage irony. The irony has slowly disappeared. And then there is Max. The first time Caleb and Sophie met their little brother, we chose a neutral pizza restaurant. 2 nervous mothers hovered nearby, pretending not to hover. Max looked up at Caleb, who was 17 and already 6'1", and asked, "Are you really my brother?" My son looked down at him and said, "Yeah, buddy, apparently I always was." Max did not lie to anyone. Max simply loved his daddy and drew him a picture. That drawing found its way into my kitchen. It blew apart 5 lives, and in the end, it saved every one of them. Max will not know the full story for years. When he is old enough, Renee and I have agreed that he will hear it as one story, told by 2 mothers who chose him. The following Thanksgiving, after the worst of the legal fight was behind us, we gathered in Chattanooga. 1 table, 2 families, minus 1 salesman. Renee made roast chicken. I brought pie. Caleb taught Max a card game. Nobody checked a calendar. Neil kept us 500 miles apart because his entire life depended on us never sitting at one table. Now we sit at one table every chance we get. It turns out we like it there. So if your stomach is folding and refolding some small piece of paper, listen to me. Do not blow up the lawn. Find the other woman standing in the doorway. She may not be your enemy. She may be the other half of your evidence. If this story held you until the end, subscribe to Vermilion Veil. There's a new story every single day, and behind every veil, the truth is waiting to burn.